and welcome once again to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is October 26th, and today we're going to hear part 2 of the article that we started yesterday entitled, How May the Robot Serve You?
So, Karen, yesterday we talked about robots kind of taking place in our life, and they're becoming more common. We're seeing them in more and more industries. This is not just at factories or plants. There's one place where I really don't welcome this technology, and that's restaurants.
Really?
I am ice cold. I am so sick of QR code menus, and I've only come across them a few times. I hate QR code menus. I have no love for them at all. This is not a robot, but just the creep of technology. Man, I hate a QR code menu.
That's really interesting because I was thinking of the same thing. Now, there's a restaurant chain that's quite popular that I go to every once in a while, kind of as a special treat. And I've gone there enough times that there is one of the servers there who recognizes me. And then I just sat down and she says, well, you know, we've changed over to QR codes. And I could tell from her tone of voice something was wrong. And I said, yeah. She says, well, if you really want to, you can still order from the servers. And then she says, you know, I really hate this. And I think, you know, one of the reasons I love my job as a server is because I get to interact with so many different people. When they ask about the menu, I can tell them about which dishes I like for what reason, what it contains, what to avoid, or blah, blah, blah. She just loves interacting with her clientele, which I really admire, which is, I guess, one reason why I like this server. And you could tell from her expression that this affected her really deeply. It's completely changed her job.
So as a customer, I generally will try to make my job, the server's job, as easy as possible. I want to be extremely low maintenance.
Yes, me too.
But one thing I do like is to keep the menu at my table. And a lot of restaurants, they feel this is fussy. They're like, are you done with the menu? No, we want to look at it for a future. We may come back and we're interested and we'll talk about the menu. But I like the physical menu. The QR code solves this problem where I can just keep opening and looking at it. But I hate looking at QR code menus. I think they are vastly inferior to a traditional menu.
They're not as human.
They're not as human. They're just they don't fit the purpose. It's not a robot, but it's just a way in which technology is making things more cumbersome, not better.
We're going to find that with a lot of these very advanced technologies, we may in the end reject them in some areas because we discover through the use of this technology, which makes our lives easier in some ways, that it makes our lives emptier in others.
They're QR code menus, terrible idea. Stop doing it, everybody. Stop. I hereby declare, terrible.
War on QR code menus. My server that time says, you know, a lot of us really don't like it. And I said, well, why did the restaurant institute it? And she said, well, they just figured everybody else is doing it, and it's a sign of the times you don't want to be left behind. And you could tell with every word she said about how unhappy she was with this system. On the other hand, let's get back to robots. I have been to restaurants where the robots bring you the food, and those are kind of cute. I don't mind those.
Doesn't bother me.
That doesn't bother me. So back on topic, the robots themselves are probably okay, but I view those robots as kind of fragile.
I suppose these robots have to be fragile. They can't be built as strong as they could be. Robots are slow and kind of adorable at this point because their true power would be dangerous.
That's
and
true.
We're all very adverse to being to lawsuits, and nobody wants to get run over by a fast-moving robot.
Yeah.
That would be a bad idea. Or because they need to move slowly and they're kind of cumbersome so that they don't accidentally spill hot food on you. I imagine there's a lot of purposely bad design in these to make these less efficient so they don't harm customers.
So they don't hurt people and they're less threatening. But on the other hand, another feeling I had was when the robot brought our food over was, this is such a simple thing to do. And I bet that robot is very expensive. And you have to have a whole operating system and you have to make it custom made for each restaurant because each restaurant has a different arrangement. It'd be so simple for the waiter or waitress to just take the food and put it on my table. Why bother?
And in a very final tangent here, the restaurant chain Chuck E. Cheese, if you had ever heard of it, it's a pizza restaurant with video games for kids, and they have this robot band that performs songs that you enjoy your
pizza with
your giant mechanical rat. And I learned that the operating system are like the old tower PCs that we had in the 90s, and it still operates on a 3x5 disc. Even modern Chuck E. Cheese still use this old system because it hasn't been updated in 30 years.
So the larger floppy disk or the smaller one?
The little 3x5 floppy disk, which is unbelievable to think about, which is funny to think about, that these robots haven't been updated in so long. They need this incredibly antiquated technology to run. And it's just...
It's kind of hilarious.
Funny in a very odd way.
We're going to start our article now. So our title again, How May the Robots Serve You? Service robots come in all different shapes and sizes. And one of the most familiar types that can be seen on a regular basis is the robot waiter.
As the name suggests, robot waiters are robots that work in restaurants. They handle some of the tasks that a human waiter would often do, such as greeting guests, leading them to their seats, delivering food, and clearing tables.
Of course, there are some tasks that robot waiters can't handle. They can't take orders or answer open-ended questions from customers. This shortcoming is one of the fundamental issues with robots. They can only do what they are programmed to and can't deal with the unexpected. Another barrier that robot waiters face is a physical one. Robots in restaurants can't navigate stairs or access outdoor seating areas separated by doors or uneven walkways. These are just a few reasons why most restaurants that have service robots still employ human waiters.
At this point in time, many restaurant owners don't see robots as a viable replacement for humans, but rather as a shift in the duties that waiters traditionally fulfill. With robots that can handle mundane tasks, human waiters can focus more on customer interaction. Robots aren't replacing humans, but relieving them of some of the tasks that they often struggle to juggle, especially in busy restaurants.
While this trend seems to benefit both restaurants and human waiters, it may encounter resistance from certain patrons who are not used to or dislike interacting with robots. Nevertheless, if this trend in food and beverage continues, then everyone will need to be more accepting of these robots when dining out. Let's go back to the beginning. So, service robots come in all different shapes and sizes, and one of the most familiar types that can be seen on a regular basis is the robot waiter. I think this is pretty straightforward. We probably don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but do remember these phrases in chunks because they will be very useful to you in many contexts. So, come in all different shapes and sizes. Just learn that as a whole chunk. One of the most familiar types, one of the most attractive ones, whatever, that's another great chunk. That can be seen on a regular basis. That's another great chunk. So if something is really common, something that can be seen on a regular basis, just use that whole chunk, is the robot waiter. One other thing I think of is when I see these robots is I think of Japan. This looks so Japanese.
I agree. There is a little cart that putt-putts around one of the Western supermarkets near Taipei 101. And I'm not sure if it's Japanese. I didn't see any markings on it, but its face has that kind of Japanese cat, and it's just very
right.
cuddly looking for
right.
a very cold device. I agree that I wonder if a lot of these companies aren't taking notes from Japanese artistic styles to kind of to make it more friendly, more adorable.
Or if it was made in Japan and the whole system was made in Japan, which I think is very likely because the Japanese very early started using robots and they started designing them for home use, like as pets or companions. It's the Japanese who have been doing a lot of this.
Let's continue to our next paragraph. As the name suggests, robot waiters are robots that work in restaurants.
I think we can just leave that as it is. That's pretty easy.
They handle some of the tasks that a human waiter would often do, such as greeting guests, leading them to their seats, delivering food, and clearing tables.
Now, you have worked in a restaurant before? Just one or more?
So I worked at McDonald's and Subway,
mm-hmm.
and I have frequented restaurants.
Okay.
As a customer.
Yeah. I haven't really worked in fast food that I can remember, but I've worked in a lot of restaurants where you have to take orders and then bring the food to the table, etc. Mainly because you would get tips, which I don't agree with the system, but if you're a student who needs money, getting tips, you usually earn more than you would, like, say, at a McDonald's or something. So when I was looking at that list, I thought, those were my duties. And honestly, I enjoyed waitressing. I enjoyed it. And it was for the reason that my server here in Taipei gave, because I would meet so many people. I would hear so many interesting stories, connect with people. You're kind of taking that away now when you're putting a robot in that job.
Also, I'm thinking of so frequently restaurants place men and women in different positions. There's a lot of guys in the back, and especially, and this is not sexist. I mean this with no sexism. The cute blonde is going to work the tables. She's going to work the floors because customers like interacting with those attractive people. I mean no sexism in this, but this is just restaurants. This is dollars and cents that a boss will recognize that a pimply teenager named Chris Gorski is not going to be a great waiter. He could be friendly and nice and stuff, but nobody wants to look at him. So they're going to put me in back. And my close colleague that I work with dearly, who's like an attractive woman. She's really good looking. Of course she was a waitress when she was in her 20s. And she wondered why I was stuck in fast food. I was like, well, just look at us. There's nothing hard about this. So I wonder if the burden of robots in restaurants won't fall harder on women than it will men. The busboys are going to scrape the dishes, but the women will lose out on hours that the robots will be taking.
Okay, that is in theory very possible. I worked in a restaurant where we, mainly relied on tips for our income. And then one day the boss announced that, well, we are going to pool our tips and divide them evenly. I go, oh? And then they said, because it's not fair. And I wasn't terribly cute, but I was female. And so they said, women are making more, and it's not fair to the waiters. So that actually happened. So we started pooling our tips. I never felt it myself because I've worked in many, many restaurants, and I always had a lot of male colleagues, and they were fine. Okay, so anyway, that's an issue to consider. Oh, also one more thing. Going through that list, it just sounded so familiar. It says clearing tables. Clearing tables means removing the dishes, the dirty dishes. That's clearing the table. But then you have to wipe it with a rag. And that was actually the part that found itself into my dreams because I was working a lot of hours as a waitress many times in my life. And a lot of people might, count sheep or something like that. In my dreams, I was wiping tables and wiping tables. The whole dream was wiping tables.
All right, question. So imagine we're at a table with like 6 or 7 people. We're customers at the restaurant, and we finished several plates of food. Do you pre-stack the dishes for your waiter or waitress to take away, or do you let them come just take the dishes for you?
It depends on how much time we have. If I'm waiting a long time for the busboy to come by or the waiter, whoever's doing it, I may start stacking. But there's something to keep in mind. I used to do that on a plane. I would stack the things up. And then the flight attendant would separate them. I said, I thought it was helping you. She says, a lot of people think that. But they put them away in a special cart that has space for just one tray. So I think I tend not to stack so much because I might make their work harder.
It's such a funny, like vaguely passive-aggressive statement. Yeah, a lot of people think that.
Well, no, I thought it was.
No, of course. I mean, like
kind.
that sentence could come across as passive-aggressive.
I didn't think so at all.
Funny here.
Yeah, I didn't think so at all. I thought, oh yeah, well, that means that you're not the only one who thinks of that. But in fact, you should just leave it.
You're being helpful, right?
From there, I just left it. Yeah, and also the service in Taiwan over the past 30-some years in most restaurants is usually very good. They usually whisk away the stuff before you have time to stack.
They'll take food sometimes even before you're finished with it.
And that really irritates me. I say,
we're okay.
There may be like just little scraps of it, and they grab it, and I said, I'm not done yet. They go, oh, sorry. You're going to scrape? Yeah, I'm going to scrape.
Yeah. Every grain of rice.
And how about you? What do you do?
I will stack those dishes. It benefits the waiter or waitress. Generally speaking, they can take one big stack. Also, we now have more room at our table. I think it kind of benefits everybody. Plus, it's like a common courtesy thing, which I think you and I both are concerned about.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. Sometimes I do it as well. All right, paragraph 3. Of course, there are some tasks that robot waiters can't handle. That's also very straightforward. So we're getting some help from the robots, but they cannot do everything. They can't take orders or answer open-ended questions from customers. So I bet they could take orders in the future, but now they're using the QR code, so it's much more straightforward. I mean, at least they don't have to have speech recognition. You just use your phone and then swipe. So they're saying that this is something they're not good at. If you're going to order orally and then you ask it some questions, it's not going to be able to answer. This shortcoming is one of the fundamental issues with robots. And this, to me, is really fundamental. It's the core issue of robots and AI in general. And the rest of it comes out in the next sentence. They can only do what they are programmed to and can't deal with the unexpected. This sentence is really important. If you take anything away from today's lesson, let it be this sentence. I have listened to many, many podcasts discussing AI. And in the end, they find out the hugest difference between people and AI is humans, when they run into a novel situation, first of all, oh my God, what am I going to do? We have a big reaction, but we very quickly think of a way around it. We have flexibility. When the unexpected happens, we can usually figure something out. AI is not good at this.
I thought that this sentence and the sentence after the sentence we were just reading actually have very nice transitions here. So this shortcoming, I'm jumping ahead slightly, another barrier. I thought this was another good way of kind of segueing these two sentences and these different problems that robots face. And I'm thinking of these kinds of things recently because some of my oldest students that I've been teaching for since they were like in second grade and now they're approaching college, like I'm thinking of advancing their English with better, smoother transitions, move away from the cliches and the basics, the inconclusions of the world. And,
yes.
and just they need to know that phrase, but now it's time to push things forward. And I just thought of this and I thought of them and I said, oh, this is very appropriate. I'm going to show them this later.
Our brain works in steps, so make sure that one step grows out of the one before it and it goes logically. It'll be much easier on your reader. So they are saying, first of all, it has some brain problems because humans are pretty good at finding a way around sticky situations, even though we don't always enjoy it. And it's going from that to physical problems, which is the sentence that Chris was just talking about. Another barrier that robot waiters face is a physical one. So if you see their design, they are not yet good at things like steps. That comes in the next sentence. Let's just go to that. Robots in restaurants can't navigate stairs or access outdoor seating areas separated by doors or uneven walkways. Now, personally, I think that they could design ways for robots to be able to step over things or walk up stairs. I believe it's possible, but I don't think that they've focused their research work on those areas yet.
Those robots do actually exist. They tend to be very expensive, and robots are already expensive enough. This may be something we see far in the future, but as for now, they're going to have like tank controls basically rolling around. The robots that walk are exceptionally creepy looking because of the movement needed. And to compound this factor, there was a video game from a year or two ago. It was exceptionally popular. And there were certain areas where robots were patrolling, and they were based off these, I think, MIT-designed robots that actually could walk and go over steps and up and down steep inclines. And they were terrifying. Oh. And so watching these robots, it's like, oh, man.
Scary.
Yes, you recognize the uncanny valley of something that is so close to real, yet there's something just off. And that's scary. And man, it was called Metroid Dread if you happen to be a gamer. And dread is the appropriate word for it because when those guys were coming, you were just like, oh no.
When they start acting more and more like humans, but they're made of metal and they're very strong,
that's right.
You get scared and you don't know about their intentions. Last sentence of this paragraph. These are just a few reasons why most restaurants that have service robots still employ human waiters. Well, thank goodness they do. So I had that nice conversation with my server about how awful QR codes are.
All right, let's get on to our next paragraph here. At this point in time, many restaurant owners don't see robots as a viable replacement for humans, but rather as a shift in the duties that waiters traditionally fulfill.
So they're saying that, well, we're not trying to replace our servers. We're just trying to offload some of the less interesting, less fun parts of their job. So they're saying that, no, they're just helping you.
So viable is a great word. Viable is a word in Latin that means life, it means something is realistic or something can be successful. It's not successful yet, but it is viable. The business is viable. It means it can be successful.
Keep it in mind. You're going to need it pretty soon.
And when we say fulfill duties, that just means you need to do this job. Let's continue with robots that can handle mundane tasks. Human waiters can focus more on customer interaction.
But are they going to spend as much time with the customers now that so many opportunities for human interaction have been replaced by machines?
Mundane is a great word. It literally means of this world, so it's not exciting. It's a Latin word with Greek origins, actually, and it's the opposite of cosmos. So mundane means dull or boring. It's from this world. It's not exciting. It's not aliens and laser beams.
Think of red dust in Chinese. That refers to something about the same.
Let's continue. Robots aren't replacing humans, but relieving them of some of the tasks they often struggle to juggle, especially in busy restaurants. Doesn't it feel like they're just trying to convince you this is good?
Yes, and they are right that if you are a server in a restaurant, unless business is not good, you are very, very busy. And you often, your order isn't coming right away. You don't get to a table right away. You do have to juggle a lot of things. But looking back on it, it's just part of the job. It's okay. It's doable. Let's move on. While this trend seems to benefit both restaurants and human waiters, it may encounter resistance from certain patrons who are not used to or dislike interacting with robots. And there are lots of us. Nevertheless, if this trend in food and beverage continues, then everyone will need to be more accepting of these robots when dining out. Not necessarily. If enough people don't like it, I think we can set up a protest. We can avoid restaurants that use a lot of robots. I think they could still change.
I think so, too. And we have another nice setup here. While A, nevertheless B, this is a more common and useful series of ways of setting up your sentences. Be careful of dining out. That's long I, not dinning out.
I remember when I learned that when I was a kid. So I saw this word in the newspaper, and then I said, how do you pronounce R-I-D? And my mother and sister said, rid. And then I said, 4 people were ridding on the highway.
Yeah, that's not right.
That's how I learned about the double consonant rule. Okay, let's go to our questions. Number 1, according to the Day 1 passage, robots have become blank in size and are finding their way into various settings. They have become what in size? Are they becoming really huge and looming?
No, they're getting smaller in size.
So the answer for blank number 1 is smaller. Among the different types of robots, service robots are designed to blank humans with service or customer-related tasks, and the definition of service robots is continually expanding. This one was a little harder, although the answer is a very simple word.
So I said help humans, although assist. There are lots of synonyms here. This is a great way to practice your synonyms here.
Because it is a transitive verb, they're designed to blank humans that you have to have. They're doing something to humans. What is it? I didn't think of help right away, but that's the correct answer.
So number 2, we have a little table here. Service robot applications is the name of the table. And on the left, we have 3 categories: retail, hotel, and healthcare.
The first one, retail, says service robots can manage blank and provide customers with basic information. And the answer here for letter A is inventory. They can manage inventory and provide customers with basic information.
So our second line here is hotel, and the line reads, service robots can carry blank, deliver room service, or serve as a concierge. And carry, this one should be pretty easy, carry luggage.
Okay. And number 3, healthcare. Service robots are able to set up patient rooms, blank essential provisions and medicines, and perform cleaning and disinfection tasks. The answer here is transport, or you could also say deliver. The service robots can transport or deliver essential provisions and medicines, etc.
Number 3, according to the Day 2 passage, which of the following tasks does a robot waiter not do?
The answer is A. Answer questions without a specific answer. They're not really good at improvising. And number 4, which word in the Day 2 passage means able to work as intended or able to succeed? I gave you a little reminder earlier. Do you remember the word?
The word is viable.
And so make sure you learn that one. It's a great word. That's all we have time for today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.